Are the humans of the RDA the bad guys of Avatar? Or are they the good guys? When I made this video, the humans of Avatar explained, I was overwhelmed by a bunch of people commenting going like, finally, someone's talking about the good guys from Avatar. Like a bunch of humanity first comments and people saying that the Na'vi had it coming. So I thought it would be a good use of my time to add more fuel to the fire of this debate by making a list of everything the RDA has done that could be perceived as bad. Like, look, I actually made a list. It's on a clipboard and everything, so you know it's official. And it's in chronological order, so thanks to this list, we're gonna go through the entire history of the RDA. Sorry, what I meant to say, we're gonna go through the entire history of wrongdoing by the RDA. So you can determine for yourself if you think the humans are good or evil, but based on all the things I say at your face. Oh, and by the way, for those who watch the Humans Explain video of mine, there is going to be some repeating of information here, but don't worry, like 90% of this video is actually new information that I'm dumping onto your soul. 2000 through like the 2130s, the RDA developed a world-spanning transit system, but not to unite us. The RDA's main intent for developing that transit system was to quickly and efficiently transport outsourced and underpaid laborers to do their job and then immediately get sent back to their country, which can be perceived as now we're in the year 2142. In order to protect the blight on Pandora that we know to be Hell's Gate, the RDA dumped a bunch of acidic mining byproducts, pollution, herbicides, and more random pollution and pesticides to maintain a clearing around the perimeter. Oh, and there's more. Because of this, RDA employees thought it would be perfectly acceptable to walk over to the nearest stream and then dump barrels of toxic waste into the water. The plants would then take up the poisoned water. The animals would then eat those plants. And then the Na'vi would eventually eat the animals. And then the Na'vi would get sick. 2148. They destroyed Earth. They did what any of us don't dream to do, which is they destroyed the planet. I know this wasn't the year that the planet actually got destroyed, but 2148 is like the only time we see Earth in the Avatar universe. And during that time, I saw a destroyed Earth, so we're going with that year. How exactly did they destroy the planet, you ask? Well, I'm glad that you didn't ask, so I'm gonna happily ruin your day by saying that they sent everyone into permanent dusk. The activists intercepting transmissions from Hell's Gate claim that our hunger for energy, for more and more, we've devastated our planet. We're neck deep in festering industrial muck, in a trash heap of ever-expanding waste and decay. Dollar for dollar, we bought our extinction. The lawless says in the RDA, who enslave the sun and dictate the day and the darkness, who sell you a permanent and insatiable Jones via a nutrient-free food pack. I feel like that sentence was a little extra, but you still get the sentiment behind it, right? So yeah, if you were a citizen living on Earth in the year 2148, it would be a bummer, man. Because if you live there, your diet would mainly consist of spirulina, an algal protein concentrate, because this is the only food source that is left to efficiently feed anyone. In terms of housing, because why not make this worse? People are confined to these locked box cubes. There's no more national parks.
There's no more clean water.
Because all the orbiting factories owned by the RDA are spread across the solar system and all their pollution is getting roped into the Earth's atmosphere. So then what ends up happening? It pours down toxic water. And when it's not raining, we have to worry about ash falling from the sky. Because that's the thing, it just throughout your entire day, ash is just gonna be falling. You don't know where it's from, but this has to get better, right? Nope. So 2152, the RDA SecOps personnel hunt down and successfully eliminate the daughter of the Oloektan and Sahik of the Omatikaya clan after she reportedly destroyed a piece of RDA equipment. She destroyed a piece of equipment, so they destroyed her life by taking her out of existence. This caused the tensions between the Na'vi and the humans to just skyrocket. How could this have happened, you ask? Well, in order to better understand the RDA, we have to better understand their administrator, Parker Selfridge, and how his incompetence as a leader made a bunch of really bad things happen. Parker had a pretty hands-off approach, to say the least. He would stay in the nicer parts of Hell's Gate and never went outside the compound, never socialized with the natives, meaning he could easily dissociate and have no emotional attachment to what was going on outside of those walls. Even though he was one of the main people responsible for what was happening outside of those walls. Hence that one scene where the RDA employee was like really hesitant in moving forward because he didn't want to harm the not V. But Parker, being so detached from reality, treats the whole situation like a video game, pressing down on the joystick to speed up the process.
Keep going, he'll move. These people have to learn that we don't stop. Come on, go, go, go.
If that's not detachment, I don't know what the heck is. But actually, hold on one sec. But actually, there is one documented time of him leaving Hell's Gate. If we go back to the year 2142 for a second, Dr. Grace Augustine was hanging out with Mawat. The two of them were shredding. They were tearing up the place. They were doing shenanigans. Basically, stuff that, you know, your average forest ecologists typically do. They were finding chemistry in Pandora flora, but they were also finding friendship along the way. Augustine wanted the Not-V youth to learn from the humans, so she invited Mawat and the said youths to the Hell's Gate compound to show them that the humans aren't that bad. She invited them to this to show the humans weren't that bad. She thought that if the Not-V could navigate the ways of the humans, in turn the humans could find a way to better navigate the ways of the Omatikaya. This could result in better peace talks and a way of better integrating the two cultures rather than remaining polarized. But doing this would take a lot of time, patience, and resources. Selfridge did not like the sound of that. No, he did not. He did not like his elongated peace talks. Grace Augustine would describe Selfridge as not being happy about anything. The bigger picture isn't exactly his forte. In the Adapt or Die comics, there's this moment where Parker Selfridge says to Grace, "What now? You decided you hadn't hit your daily quota for how often you annoy me in one day." It's such a good line of dialogue because it really does sum up his internal monologue. To him, everything is about meeting those deadlines and quotas set by a bunch of needy shareholders and investors who aren't even on the freaking planet. When the Omatikaya were visiting Hell's Gate, this paradise, the literal first words that Selfridge said to the Not-V youths were, "Just make sure you don't break anything." Okay. It was still an interesting moment for Selfridge, though, because Parker was mainly viewing the Not-V through screens, as previously stated earlier in this video. But here, what we're witnessing is that he's leaving the comfort of his own home to meet the natives face to face. Reluctantly meet the natives face to face, but he's doing it. It was a new experience for him, and he got out of his comfort zone. If only for a second. Selfridge didn't want the Not-V there any longer than they had to be because it was holding up the workday. And he goes on to remind Grace of how much 1 hour of work stoppage will cost the company, not at all focusing on the potential long-term gains from this interaction. Like Grace said, he can't really think long-term. During the Omatikaya's field trip to Hell's Gate, there's a moment where Grace is trying to be fully transparent in this exchange of information. So she shows Mawat a clear cutting done by the RDA bulldozers, something Mawat was not happy about. But Grace points out that everything heals and nothing the humans do on Pandora is permanent. Poetically, she points to the little patch of grass on the ground where little flowers are growing out of the desert-like soil, and then Parker immediately steps on it. The next day, after the Omatikaya's visit, Mawat doesn't give Grace or the other humans permission to land at the Omatikaya settlement because she needed a moment because of this. She was like, oh man. But also, the Not-V kids were getting sick, so she had to deal with that. Grace, treating the situation delicately, respects their wishes. But then Parker is all like, "I'm Parker Selfridge, and I suffer from average intelligence caked in complacency." So he tells Grace, "Who cares what they requested? Tell them what we request, and then do it." Which kind of defeats the whole notion as to what a request is. He's trying to approach the peace negotiations with the same strategy as every car salesman that I've ever hated, which is all cars. I think it's important to note that in the book Avatar Visual Exploration, a book that I commonly mistake for Avatar Visual Dictionary, it said that Parker, Selfridge, embodies the stereotype of a blinkered corporate executive. He is an adequate manager from the standpoint of generating paperwork and overseeing day-to-day operations of the Hell's Gate colony. However, he's incapable of seeing the bigger picture. I mean, just look at his office. It's so tone deaf. He has a Not-V bow, Not-V arrows, and other Not-V decorations taken from the Omatikaya or other nearby clans. Yet when it comes to actually doing anything to take care of them, By the way, there's also a huge market for Pandoran artifacts, so it's not uncommon for people like Selfridge to own a lot of these items. They'll take ceremonial items from various clans like longbows, battle shields, or even bowls. These items typically become part of the private collections of RDA executives, and the part that really sucks about this is that the Na'vi don't waste anything. A lot of time goes into making these items that the Na'vi would then use on a daily basis. Plus, the ceremonial stuff is incredibly sacred. So much purpose and meaning goes into each item. The RDA just steals them and then sells them because they like the aesthetic. The RDA brought the Dinicthoid back to Earth. For those of you who don't know, the Dinicthoid is an incredibly dangerous fish that hunts stern beasts. It hunts this, and they decided to bring it back to Earth. The RDA executives thought it would be so sick if they brought this creature back to their research facilities in the Great Basin. Now they're spawning Dinicthoids in RDA labs, and there's already reports of them getting into our sewer systems. Just no real scientific reason for bringing them back to Earth. It's just because corporate culture wanted to indulge taking this thing back to add to their collections to show off to their friends, because why not? But going back to Parker not caring about the big picture, remember when I was talking about the RDA casually dumping barrels of toxic waste into the nearest stream? Well, because of the circle of life, the chemicals would work their way up the food chain until the Na'vi eventually consumed them, and then they got sick. The first Na'vi to get sick would be the youth. Whatever the heck this substance is, the substance was using up all the essential nutrients in biological systems, so the body couldn't keep up with whatever the substance is binding up, meaning it's making the Na'vi sick to the point where they ain't gonna be Na'vi anymore, because they're gonna be with AWA. Because they're not going to be living. Grace needed to prevent the fatal sickness caused by the RDA pollution. And I kid you not, during this time, Selfridge was the most annoying bureaucrat on the entire moon. When Grace puts her botany knowledge to the test and attempts to manufacture a cure for the Na'vi as quickly as possible, Selfridge was there to fight her every step of the way. I'm gonna let Parker dig himself a hole right now by reading an actual conversation that transpired between him and Grace Augustine. This occurred when she was in her lab trying to find a cure. Selfridge, what's the point? It's not like they're going to be grateful even if you figure it out. Augustine, the point is that they don't die. Selfridge. And Selfridge, I think we all know that no one wants anyone to die. I'm just saying, this illness could solve a lot of problems, so maybe we should do what the Na'vi want and stay out of it. It's sometimes these people. Parker was saying this at a time where he genuinely believed the RDA wasn't responsible for this, even though they were. His argument was that the medical doctors at Hell's Gate should be the ones helping the Na'vi, but the Omatikaya won't talk to them, even though the medical doctors, who are the ones responsible for taking care of the avatars, are inequipped to deal with the situation, as it was a brand new illness to the Na'vi. Plus, there was no concrete evidence pointing to a source of the problem yet. When the other avatars at Hell's Gate started suffering from the same sickness, the team maintaining the avatars didn't know what to do. The idea of sending the sick Na'vi to the medical team was just Parker's way of alleviating any guilt that he might have felt and any responsibility, because that idea just wasn't going to work. I know this for a fact because the man just keeps reiterating, hey, if we just let nature run its course right now and take a step back and don't try to find a cure and let the Omatikaya maybe perhaps succumb to this illness. He won't stop saying that he thinks it's going to solve a lot of problems. It's somehow even more bothersome that he doesn't just outright give everyone the order to stop what they're doing and let everyone die. I mean, granted, Parker still cares about things, you know? He has to minimize the casualties of PsyOps personnel, SecOps personnel, and the other mine workers. But then again, the number one priority is staying on schedule, meeting those deadlines, not keeping people alive. When Grace's avatar got sick from the same illness that was plaguing the Omatikaya clan, her avatar body was left behind with Mawat and the rest of the clan. So when Grace is about to lose her avatar and the entire USS Omatikaya is going downhill, Parker made sure to take the time out of his day to tell Grace that she has to retrieve her avatar, and that if she doesn't find it in good condition, to tell the Omatikaya that there's gonna be repercussions. I'm like, Parker, they're about to go extinct because you keep delaying the research? What other repercussions could there be? With that said, I think there's some redeeming qualities to Parker. He does care about the safety of Grace and a bunch of, like, all the employees at Hell's Gate. But he's cool with standing by and letting every not V reach their end. Thanks to Parker existing, Grace found a cure and saved the entire Omatikaya clan, including her avatar and everyone else's avatars. So fast forward over a decade, the ESM-01 mine is drying up, and the RDA needs to start mining elsewhere because we have this proclivity for never-ending expansion. The largest unobtainium deposits are typically under the most spiritual sites, like the arches or the floating mountains, or these incredibly large trees, making Hometree, aka the main settlement of the Omatikaya clan, the next place to mine that cheese.
I mean, look at all that cheddar.
August 13th, 2154. In this deleted scene from what should have been a 4 to 5 hour long movie, Parker was more caught up in improving his golf swing in Pandoran gravity, rather than listening to what the science dorks needed from him.
The low gravity and the high air density cancel out, which doesn't affect the distance, but it just...
Still, after all this time between him and Grace, nothing's changed. Grace asks for more time. Parker says no. Parker leaves the conversation saying this.
Look, this thing is inevitable. What does it matter when it happens? I'm sorry, Dr. Augustine, we're out of time.
But then Grace responds with this golden line.
It matters how it happens.
That right there, this line that you and I are looking at on the screen right now, this is the golden line of the entire video, and possibly the universe. I feel like that statement right there just sums up the entire situation right here. To me, in this debate about a fictional property, it really isn't about how humans are bad. It's about how the humans' approach to the situation is bad. Grace, who is an advocate for the Omatikaya, is still like, I'm a realist right now. I get what you're doing. I understand. You're gonna take Hometree, but we need to do this in the least destructive way possible. There's a thing that we do in war that has to do with checks and balances. But then again, at the time, they're not even at war with the Na'vi. The activists got less annoying to me after I figured out that they're not just trying to save Pandora. They're trying to restore Earth back to a state where our oceans are blue, instead of whatever disturbing color they are now. Think of it this way. The Interplanetary Commerce Administration didn't just grant the RDA with the perpetual right to everything shipped, derived, and developed on Pandora. They granted the RDA with the perpetual rights to every other planet or moon, meaning the RDA has a complete monopoly on every location in the galaxy. They basically own the universe. So for the people with the argument going like, well, let's just take over Pandora. The RDA is just gonna do to Pandora what they did to Earth. They're just gonna keep destroying whatever moon or planet while keeping the majority of the humans miserable. The humans need to change their approach, because it doesn't matter if you're a new settler or anything, because eventually most humans are gonna be living in those cubes. I don't like the cubes, man. But eventually we're all gonna be living in the cubes if the RDA is still running the show. Just to conclude, I think the point of the series is not humans are bad, RDA bad, RDA leading charge for humanity, but RDA also imprisoning humanity. It's a bad thing disguised as a good one. The classic whodunit. The Na'vi are more human and certainly possess more humanity than most RDA executives. In a book that I have somewhere around here, Avatar: The Visual Exploration describes Wainfleet by saying this. Wainfleet is an ignorant grunt, a mercenary who fights only for a paycheck and the brutal thrill of hurting others. He embodies the concept of might makes right, believing Namsu grants him supreme moral authority. Wainfleet is the epitome of the occupying military as the ugly aggressor. Wainfleet is most likely the one who pulled the trigger on Sowanen, but instead of getting sent on the next shuttle off Pandora, he gets promoted to be Quaritch's #2 guy. This guy. The trigger-happy, opportunistic psychopath. This guy. We're not done talking about Parker, actually, so we're gonna go back to this guy, because we haven't answered the question that I proposed in this video. at some point. Actually, you know what? In order to better analyze him and the rest of the humans, we have to bring someone else into the mix. And that would be no one other than the ace trash can from Orlando, Florida. No, I'm just kidding. We have to bring Quaritch into this. August 19th, where did I put my clipboard? August 19th, 2154. The destruction of the Tree of Voices. For those who aren't in the know, the Na'vi can use their neural cues to connect with any exposed roots in order to form a neural link. Once the link is established, they can, in a sense, upload their memories to this tree. This particular tree, the Tree of Voices, the one that we're currently talking about, it is a very, it's a sacred tree, as it contains all the stored memories of the Omatikaya clan. And the RDA just ran that over and took the roots with them. I think it's safe to say that Parker didn't fully understand how sacred the Tree of Voices was to the Omatikaya, given his response to Grace.
You know what? You throw a stick in the air around here, it's gonna land on some sacred fern.
And his other responses to Grace.
What the hell have you people been smoking out there?
In fact, for the first time, Grace is explaining to him how Pandora's neural network works.
And there are 10 to the 12th trees on Pandora.
Which is a lot, I'm guessing.
So yeah, he definitely didn't know. He had no clue. Parker was just trying to keep on schedule. From his understanding of the situation, they were encroaching on Omatikaya territory to mine more unobtainium, but also serve as an intimidation tactic to get the clan to move. I would say it's more due to negligence on Selfridge's end. It wasn't him trying to act malicious. He was just trying to hit those numbers and meet them deadlines. All that was going on in his head was, gotta keep on schedule. We gotta keep on schedule. You know what? I genuinely think that Quaritch is smarter than he appears. Because right now, what's happening is that I'm implying Quaritch planned the whole thing. He planned this. The retaliation for the Tree of Voices was part of his plan. Upon witnessing the Tree of Voices getting bulldozed, the Omatikaya were a little offended, to say the least. Remember that daughter of the clan leaders? Well, she, as in Sawanin, was promised to Sute. They were a formidable pair, and they loved each other and stuff. After Sawanin's passing, Sute would visit the Tree of Voices every single night to talk to her spirit. But when the Tree of Voices got bulldozed, so did any memory of her. Sute did not take this well. For some reason. In retaliation, Sute and the other Na'vi that he was hanging out with for most of the movie appropriately attack the bulldozers and SecOps personnel responsible for paving over the memory of his ancestors and so on. In the aftermath, Sute and friends totaled the equipment and left behind the bodies of an entire SecOps squad, as in like 6 SecOps people. While Parker was spending the past 3 months golfing, Quaritch had nothing better to do but to play the part of a soldier and gather intel. Jake was partially responsible for the Tree of Voices getting obliterated and the Tree of Souls becoming the next target. Yes, I know all the Na'vi tribes were congregating on that point, so clearly it would become a target for the SecOps. But if we just go back in time for a second to this deleted scene at side 26, the science dorks are outside looking at plants and doing whatever the heck just whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. While Trudy and Jake are inside downloading Grace's research on places like the Tree of Souls, so they can then turn it into Quaritch in order to buy more time.
We're buying time, Jake.
Quaritch then studied his enemy. He discovered how sacred the Tree of Voices was, which is why he intentionally made that get on the list of things that they're just gonna completely annihilate. And through this stolen research, he also understood that the Na'vi's direct line to Awa is the Tree of Souls. It would be their last hope at communication with their ancestors. He wanted to make sure that any remaining Na'vi had absolutely no reason to return to this part of the forest. So yeah, Quaritch knew the severity of taking the Tree of Voices out of the equation. He wanted to provoke the Omatikaya and get them to retaliate. Grace even confirms that this conspiracy is most likely the case because she outright says that Quaritch was responsible for orchestrating what went down at the Tree of Voices.
They never even wanted us to succeed. They bulldozed a sacred site on purpose to trigger a response.
And Jake, Sully, the main character of the first film, even backs her up by saying,
when people are sitting on you want, you make them your enemy. And then you're justified in taking it.
So Quaritch may be a genius. The deleted scenes imply that Parker was asleep at the wheel. Quaritch saw an opportunity to sacrifice a few troops and unite the entire Hell's Gate colony against that little clan. Parker's job was to keep operations running smooth and steady. This includes him overseeing the safety and the well-being of his workers. With the number of fatalities going up, SecOps members of Hell's Gate were getting angry. Also, pair this with construction vehicles being used as target practice by the Not-V during the time of Jake's arrival. It's safe to say that the mine workers have also reached a tipping point. Tensions were so high that they could be located in the mesosphere, which, as we all know, is right above the stratosphere, so pretty high. Parker was desperate for a solution to a problem that he inadvertently caused by being checked out for the past decade. Quaritch proposes a plan to Parker, Selfridge, that the colonel would get his troops, fly over to Hometree, get the Omatikaya to move with minimal casualties, mainly driving out these quote-unquote savages with stuff like gas, saying it would be humane.
It'll be humane.
Asterisks, more or less.
More or less.
But I think that the key phrase from this conversation is when Quaritch boldly says this.
This is exactly the incident we needed.
This is exactly the incident we needed. As in, my plan worked. Everyone's ready to eliminate our problem. Let's begin a rock. And then we'll roll. August 20th, 2154. Quaritch launches an attack on Hometree and burns it to the ground in the least humane way possible. If he just took the C-21 Dragon, he would have been fine. This thing is equipped with enough firepower to devastate the size of Manhattan in 6 seconds, according to the book and activist survival guide. But no, not only does Quaritch bring the Doomsday Bringer to the home of the trees, he also brings all the Scorpions and Samsons to fire their missiles at the tree as well. I'm certainly no tactician, but this seems a little excessive to me. I don't know, I also remember Quaritch saying something about gas and only using gas and something about the word humane. You know, I'm starting to suspect that Parker got lied to. He got played, Parker. In a visual exploration, it said that Quaritch is a veteran soldier who has fought with honor, but without really having a cause worth fighting for. Now Quaritch thinks he's found one, the survival of the human race, which he feels far outweighs the needs of the native Pandoran species, no doubt influenced by the new RDA employer's unbridled greed. Quaritch is almost without empathy, meaning he has no qualms about destroying anything he can't or won't understand. Keyword won't. To me, the reason that Quaritch keeps the Viper Wolf scars on his face is to serve as a constant reminder of the savagery that he sees on the outside. It allows him to further demonize the Not-V. I'm gonna say something freaking wild right now. I think Parker and Quaritch are actually a lot alike, but their approach is pretty different. They both have no patience and they need to meet their deadlines. However, Parker is incredibly passive, while Quaritch is over on the other end of the spectrum, as in the full-on aggressive end of the spectrum. Quaritch lacks a lot of, what's the word again? It's empathy, but understands what needs to get done to accomplish that mission. Well, he does seem like nothing more than a one-dimensional villain in the first movie. He is pretty real in a sense where he like has to get a job done, so he gets it done. Parker supposedly doesn't care if the natives live or die, but he averts his eyes away from the ugliness and doesn't want to get his hands dirty, which in a way is almost worse. He's in a position of power, and using that power correctly, he can create the most amicable solution between all parties involved. But instead, he's all like, can you just do it? Please. I don't want to deal with one of the only things that I'm responsible for. After receiving the information from Jake's video log,
They're never gonna leave Hometree.
and then witnessing Jake use his avatar to intervene in Hell's Gate's day-to-day operations by damaging a bulldozer, Parker then overreacts and shuts down the avatar program.
I'm shutting down the Avatar program.
Jake arrived on Pandora on May 19th, 2154, and the attack on Hometree occurred on August 20th, 93 days after Jake was given the 3-month deadline.
You got 3 months.
Let's imagine for a second that by 3 months, they meant 90 days. That means Jake, Sully, was only given 1 extra day for Dream Hunt, and then the bulldozers took the Tree of Voices the next day. So when Trudy says,
We're buying time, Jake.
in reality, they only bought themselves like 24 hours. Anyway, Parker hears Jake claim that the clan he spent the entire movie trying to convince to move was never going to move. And Jake knew that they weren't going to move, but didn't tell Selfridge that they weren't going to move. Meaning Selfridge had to wait the entire 3 months to realize that no one was moving. So the Avatar program was officially ended on August 19th, 2154. By the way, Jake, I understand that you're supposed to share everything in the video logs, but like maybe just, I don't know, read the room. Don't you think it would be a little counterintuitive to your plans to record you saying that they're not going to move and also not delete the file of you saying they're not going to move? Yeah, maybe don't do that next time. Oh wait, there's not going to be a next time because
I'm shutting down the Avatar program.
Anyway, when the ships are leaving to attack Hometree, I'd like to believe that Parker reflected on that time where he met all those Na'vi youths. Because when Jake says to him,
You don't want that kind of blood in your hands. Believe me.
that line hits so much harder when you understand that Parker knows the kids Jake is talking about. Well, actually, he knows the kids he met a decade ago, so they're now adults, but you get the point. I don't know. I feel like Jake saying that to him is what gets Parker to have a change of heart for once, because he doesn't fight Jake or Grace. And for the first time in the movie, he's really given them more time. It's not a lot of time. In fact, it's a strict deadline of 1 hour.
1 hour.
But come on, doesn't that moment just like warm your heart a little bit? I mean, my heart is still a cold, dark, empty, soulless place, but for a moment, it felt warmth. The moment where Parker is helping out Jake and Grace so they can go warn the clan.
1 hour.
It kind of felt like he was sneaking around. For a moment, me, as an audience member, I almost forgot that he was in charge of the entire operation. He had complete control over how the RDA was handling things. He had complete control over how they were going to get that cheese.
Look at all that cheddar.
But as we've witnessed before, he'd rather have someone else or something else take care of the problem for him, whether that would be an illness or a military leader who's gone off the rails, which is why Parker is ultimately pressured into approving Operation Unnecessarily Unleash all the firepower in the world onto Hometree. So to catch you up on where we're at right now, Hometree's done. It's as done as the chances of the love of my life ever returning to me. The rest of the RDA watches the devastation, and this time they're just not that happy about what they just did. For the first time, Parker feels the weight of his decisions or lack thereof. Because of Grace, Parker met Moai, and he met a lot of the kids of the Omatikaya. Grace's speeches didn't get him to instantly change his mind, but I feel like her constant attempts to reason with him over the years gradually broke away Parker's blinders. But it wasn't until Parker saw the burning of Hometree that he was hit with the emotional impact that we all experienced in the mid to late 2000s when we watched that Sarah McLachlan commercial. Parker started to feel. He learned what a feeling was. I love Parker's character arc. You know, the one that we never really get to see in the final cut of Avatar. We saw a little bit of change in the movie, but in the deleted scenes, oh my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, the deleted scenes. Parker's character arc is quite profound. He keeps himself emotionally separated from the Na'vi for more than a decade. And this is the guy that was like, maybe it solves our problem. But when it comes to actually harming them, he can't, and he feels guilt. For example, my favorite line delivery is when he calls the Na'vi.
They're fly-bitten savages that live in a tree. All right, look around. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of trees. They can move.
You can tell that he's projecting all this anger and frustration from having to hit that deadline onto the Na'vi. It's his last attempt to fully detach from the blue aliens. So wait, I just noticed Parker is wearing a blue shirt when he has the change of heart. It's blue, like the Na'vi. The people that he's currently trying to help at that moment. Every time I watch the deleted scenes from Avatar, I get unnecessarily upset because I'm sitting over here going like, they could have kept this in, they could have kept this in some parallel universe. I know they got the greatest 4 to 5 hour sci-fi epic, but this is not that universe because there was so much good stuff left on the cutting room floor. Like before Jake gets recruited by the Colonel, we see how much of an outcast he is amongst the science dorks. All he's been met with is resentment for not being his brother.
Well, listen to me, Marine. You're driving an Avatar now. That means you're in my world. Got it?
So in this deleted scene, we see him in Hell's Kitchen, sitting all the way at the end of the PSYOPs table. He's alone with no one to talk to. So when the Colonel starts speaking Jake's language and gives him a mission and a purpose that he's familiar with, somehow Jake is more agreeable.
Can you do that for me, son? Hell yeah, sir.
But later in the movie, Jake is taken in by the Omatikaya. So the next time we see him in Hell's Kitchen, he's now sitting next to Grace, while Norm is left on the outside. Wouldn't that have been wonderful if they left that deleted scene in, just to have that juxtaposition to signify the change in dynamics? I know this has nothing to do with the topic of this video. This was really just an elongated way of me saying that they should have kept a lot of deleted scenes in the movie, especially the ones containing Parker. August 23rd, 2154. The humans launch an attack on the Tree of Souls. After the unnecessary aggression taken against the Omatikaya, Jake decides to gather all nearby clans to fight the humans. I don't know, Parker. Seems like the Avatar program would come in pretty handy right now. When looking at this ever-evolving situation that he caused, Quaritch declares threat condition red. This means all the world's assets are now under his command. He wouldn't have been able to do this unless he knew that the threat outside of those walls was big enough, and that he had the support of the entire colony. With him threat condition redditing, Quaritch took over the entire Hell's Gate colony. I mean, like, the entire colony. When gearing up to attack Jake's army, you can see that Quaritch recruited a bunch of mining contractors to be part of the SecOps army. He even tells one of his officers to spread the noobs out between the squads. They were even loading the ships up with daisy cutters. The only purpose that those things are supposed to be used for is blasting rock out of the ground so that we can go in the ground to mine things. It was only used for mining operations. I'm just gonna put that on. Parker comes across what we in the tech industry would call a situation. He views the mine workers getting handed SecOps weaponry, and overall, he sees over-the-top excessive force. And in the most beautiful moment for his character, he loses it.
No! I wouldn't do that, sir.
He even fires one of the guys who was moving a large shipment of daisy cutters to use against the Na'vi.
The blasting compound goes back to the mine. What's your name? Hogan. You're fired!
When confronting Quaritch about turning the mine workers into a militia,
Listen to me. I am not authorizing you to turn mine workers local into a freaking militia.
in a very polite way, Quaritch reminds Parker that he can't really intervene because the only people that could say no to this attack are on Earth.
You're a long way from Earth.
The way Quaritch grabs Selfridge in this deleted scene, I don't know, man. It kind of reminded me of Quaritch as a recom, hissing at Buttercup or Jake. It makes me think that there was some part of him that was always a little Na'vi. This moment is so relentlessly tragic, as it's the first time Parker takes control of the situation. Except this time, it's too late. He has no real power anymore. He can't fire anyone. He can't tell anyone what to do. But I genuinely appreciate the effort happening right now. By the way, I always thought Parker firing people, or at least threatening to fire people, was amazing. Because imagine traveling 5 years, 9 months, and 22 days to a moon in a different solar system to get fired, and then have to travel 5 years, 9 months, and 22 days back to Earth. And I thought my layover in Denver was bad. I'll stop. The idea of people getting fired off Pandora is never going to be not amazing to me. But I love that Selfridge was telling everyone that they were getting fired because he's so emotionally charged for once, because he genuinely feels like he's out of control in this situation. In something in one of these books. I forgot which one. I'm just going to put whatever book this is from right here. Selfridge is not a particularly evil man. He is simply a product of corporate hubris and entitlement. So ethical and moral arguments pass over Selfridge like clouds. He feels their shadow, is dimly aware of them, but refuses to allow them to disturb his peace of mind. But here, in this room, what you and I are witnessing with our bare eyes is Selfridge finally understanding the impact that he's having on the Na'vi. He's feeling the gravity of things. He's finally feeling guilt. I can't get over it. For those who are on Quaritch's side during the first Avatar film, I think it's important to bring up a little quote from Stephen Lang, aka the guy who plays Quaritch in the first Avatar film, also plays Quaritch in the rest of the series. It's the people who come up to me and whisper, "I really like Quaritch, and I kind of agree with him." Then those folks, I kind of go, well, then I don't really want to know you. So there's that. I think Quaritch is supposed to go through a similar spiritual awakening as Jake. Quaritch basically went through Jake's journey in Avatar: The Way of Water. They both wake up from cryosleep to the sight of a legendary moon. They both cause a very destructive scene when stepping into their avatar body for the first time. They both are told to do things like look into a camera and record what's happening. They both go through the Omatikaya's Ikni Maya. There's a lot of parallels, is what I'm trying to say. When it comes to the RDA doing unethical things, I think we hit the jackpot. Somewhere in the year 2138, John Mercer, certified bad person, and xenoanthropologist Alma Cortez created the Avatar Ambassador Program, also known as the TAP program, if you want to be one of those people. John Mercer, along with Colonel Angela Harding and Alma Cortez, took a bunch of Na'vi kids from the Sarantu clan. They did this so they could raise a bunch of Na'vi like humans and indoctrinate them into their culture so they can be ambassadors for the RDA, as the name of the program would suggest. In the program, the RDA took away the Na'vi's song chords and tried to erase the history of their family and their ancestors. In order to make all this possible, Mercer had to have the entire Sarantu clan eliminated. He had his Sec Ops wipe nearly the entire Sarantu clan from the face of Pandora. Mercer covered everything up, so the RDA was actually unaware that a massacre happened. So I guess we can let this slide. But then again, Mercer killed one of the Na'vi students when she was all like, I'm gonna go walk out the front door and see my clan. And where the RDA is definitely in the wrong is they let this action go unchecked. Mercer didn't suffer any consequences from this. Then, 8 years later, in the year 2154, Jake Sully's doing the classic, I'm Turuk Makto, and I'm taking over Hell's Gate. So Mercer goes ahead and orders his Sec Ops personnel to eliminate all the students in the ambassador program. Then we fast forward 16 years, and the RDA promoted this guy, as in Mercer, to executive vice president of frontier operations. Before the RDA leaves the moon, the very bitter RDA destroyed those huge mining excavators that we see at the beginning of the film. These are used to like mine material that the humans can then use to survive. So they destroyed these in hopes that any remaining humans on the moon would eventually die out. So when they returned to Hell's Gate, the RDA would see that all the other assets are mostly intact, but there would be no rebellious humans occupying the structures because they would no longer be alive. 2168. The RDA made the abomination that is, of course, Bridgehead. I'm just gonna start with one of the most shocking images. In this concept photo of the construction of the wall of Bridgehead City, it implies that the RDA used surrounding Na'vi tribes to provide them with essential resources needed for their operation. This desert circle thing wasn't formed naturally. In order to do this, you kind of have to take the new ISVs and do a little of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of fiery deforestation that escalates a little bit too much to the point where every single tree is completely gone, including any roots. Hell's Gate may have disrupted the ecosystem, but Bridgehead City just took the ecosystem out of the equation entirely. In 2154, the RDA went to war with the Omatikaya, the Tarangi clan, and a few other clans. But now, in the 2160s, the RDA is waging war with every single Na'vi clan on Pandora. Any Na'vi who are in close proximity to the humans are in danger. Because as we've seen, when they're not fighting the Na'vi, they're forcing them to do hard labor. The Oceanic clans weren't affected too much yet, other than their Tulkun brothers and sisters getting hunted on a daily basis. What is it? But we see that the Recoms and the RDA have no diplomacy with any of the Na'vi clans as they burn down the Ta'anoist village. It's an overly aggressive tactic to lure Jake out, because once one clan is hit, Quaritch expects the news to spread around as fast as the fire that burned down their village. All the surrounding Na'vi clans would have no choice but to protect their people and turn in Jake Sully, war criminal. But I will say this, I was surprised with Quaritch in the final act of Avatar: The Way of Water and the way that he spared the Na'vi and the Mekayina clan. It was literally yesterday that he was planning on going to war with all the Na'vi on the entire moon, getting to the point where he was willing to risk every single person's life at Hell's Gate, including the mine workers. So when he told Wainfleet,
You hit them now, they attack.
Wait till he's on board.
I was taken back. It seemed like for the past, I don't know, ever, this guy was craving warfare. And just seeing him stop everyone from firing? I don't know. It's progress. Bridgehead has nearly 19 miles or 30.5 kilometers of defensive walls. You know what that means? That means we have 19 miles of defensive firepower, including turrets, missile launch systems, and other things, helping maintain a kill zone that is now 2 miles wide. Two miles. In order to keep your ecological disaster up to date, you have to be very careful and gently, ever so gently, just completely cake the land in herbicides and pesticides. It's interesting to think that the global network of AWA is within the roots of Pandora, yet the humans are so freaking disconnected, symbolically and literally, because within the circle, they dug up all the roots. Everything beneath their feet is destroyed, completely disrupting the migration patterns of the nearest flora and fauna of the moon, creating such a monstrosity that it would take decades, maybe even a century, for the environment to fully recover from it. But the constant mistreatment of the land is gonna make that return for the trees not gonna happen. Do you remember that moment when Quaritch was like,
"We will blast a crater in their racial memory so deep that they won't come within 1,000 clicks of this place ever again"?
Well, Ardmore and the new settlers just achieved that. Bridgehead wasn't the only piece of land that they ruined. They expanded out in every direction, setting up a bunch of factories and drill sites, ruining the air quality across the entire western frontier and polluting the ground with things I don't want to know what's in this water. In my Humans Explained video that's going to be outdated in a month, I mentioned that the invasion of Pandora was sanctioned by the highest levels of government back on Earth, but they launched a massive disinformation campaign to sell it to the public. I'm going to safely assume that this disinformation campaign isn't going to be working for the public's benefit, and some may be like, what are you basing this off of? Well, if only somebody wrote down an entire list of the RDA's historical wrongdoing. In an activist survival guide, the activists who are in the title of the book claim that the RDA will tell you that the corporate soldiers are so well outfitted that they can subdue anything and everything on Pandora. But then the second that you get there, you get this welcome speech.
"It is my job to keep you alive. I will not succeed."
And according to sources on the moon, the Hellfire Wasps have attacked and successfully made not alive a lot of mercenaries. In the same book, it said that the public has no knowledge of certain incidents that happen at unobtainium excavation points. Remember the floating mountains? And do you remember Norm's floating mountains dance?
We're going to the mountains. We're going to the mountains. We're going to the mountains. You're not going to the mountains.
Well, the floating mountains often crash together. This is why Na'vi call them thundering rocks. The Na'vi respect these formations and understand the dangers of them. The humans, on the other hand, they name them the Hallelujah Mountains because they point to huge deposits of unobtainium below the soil, as large amounts of unobtainium are typically found under the Hallelujah Mountains. The reckless RDA has their workers destroy the mountains in order to clear way for vehicles and ships so they could start mining. But the RDA covered up an accident where a ship-sized floating mountain suddenly inverted when they were mining unobtainium out of the ground. It's because when pulling unobtainium out of the ground, they disrupted the electromagnetic fields. The massive rock smashed into 20 mine workers, ending their lives instantly. Some consider it an act of AWA, trying to maintain the balance of all things. The RDA tried their best to keep this accident covered up and keep it secret from the public. Maybe Selfridge was more evil than I thought. Incompetence of management also led to casualty rates among workers being higher than anticipated, according to this ESM-01 report during Quaritch's old school safety brief, when he claims,
"It is not a cakewalk, but the money's good. Let's make sure you stay alive to spend it."
It seems that the workers who do stay alive end up spending all of it, but reluctantly spending it all on medical bills after they return home, because any of the mine workers who actually make it to Earth suffer from potentially fatal health problems. And if they don't succumb to physical health problems, their mental health deteriorates. The RDA has been blatantly lying to the public for decades about the lingering side effects coming back from mining unobtainium. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the RDA having a massive disinformation campaign was not for the public's benefit. Like, no. The RDA is a mega corporation controlling the government that also has no transparency with the citizens of Earth or the citizens of any extrasolar colony. You know, I'm just going to point this out now that we're here. In the year 2154, Jake was a Marine who became paralyzed in combat. The institutions back on Earth have technology to repair him, but he can't afford it on VA benefits. So let's say you're Jake Sully for a second. In order to get treatment that is readily available to other people, you have to get into a spaceship, travel 4.4 light years, taking almost 6 years of Earth time, so you can land on a very dangerous moon where everything supposedly wants to end your existence, so that you can infiltrate a nearby native clan and aid in an unwarranted and overly aggressive removal of said natives, on top of the service that he's already done. The service that made him paralyzed in the first place. He doesn't have to go the extra mile. He has to go the extra 25,866 miles. 2169 through 2170. We hear. The RDA started the recon program. Actually, this should have been mentioned when we were talking about 2154, but we're talking about it now. Like what they did in the movie where no one mentioned that they had a soul drive. I don't know if there's much debate over whether or not the recon program is unethical, but think of it this way. You go to a planet simply as a contractor. You're there to get a paycheck, nothing more. Then you're somehow convinced to put your consciousness or quote unquote soul into this drive so it can get transferred into an avatar body that is 100% owned by the RDA. Now you have no choice but to do whatever the RDA wants you to do because you're not technically a person to them anymore. And we all know how they treat the closest aliens that resemble you. It's like the unliberating version of what happened to Jake. Like, imagine if Waynefleet or any of the other recoms were like, you know what, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm predicting that not good things would happen to them. And yes, for those wondering, I am seeing how long I could keep this image on the screen for. The RDA was originally going to put all the SecOps and mining contractors into the avatar bodies, but it was too much money, so they're like, up. Instead, they sparingly hand out amp suits to some of the contractors, not all of them. Just some. The amp suit existed before the humans arrived on Pandora. So like the Samson, that was in use for like 100 years back on Earth before the events of Avatar. The amp suit was not made for Pandora. So modifications had to be made to it. My guess is that they added things like oxygen getting pumped into the cockpit. They were essentially like, okay, avatars are costing way too much money. So let's see what else we have lying around that we could use. Granted, even though the amp suit was not designed for Pandora, it was still pretty effective at protecting the driver from poisonous plants, your average swarms of hellfire wasps, and other animals. But then again, like I said before, not every SecOps personnel or mining contractor gets one of these. So for most of your workday, you're gonna be exposed to the elements with no real protection. It's gonna suck. Somewhere in 2168, Ian Garvin discovers Amrita, a mysterious material that makes it so that aging stops in humans. I don't know, that actually sounds like a good thing. Oh, wait, hold on one second. Upon the discovery of this material, the RDA launched an incredibly aggressive tulkun hunting season that never ends, so they can harvest as much Amrita out of the tulkun as possible, leaving a lot of the tulkun not alive.
What is it?
I was watching a documentary in the collector's edition of James Cameron visiting the Caiapo in Brazil. And at the end of this documentary, he discusses his, high hopes for the future, as well as the overall message of Avatar. He believes that we shouldn't just abandon our cities overnight and live like the indigenous communities that we see in Brazil or any other parts of the rainforest. In his opinion, we wouldn't know how to do that because we've severed ties with ancient knowledge. His idea for humanity is that humans have to transform into something different, something that never existed before, a techno-indigenous kind of people, viewing this as kind of the next step in human evolution, whereas society works in unison with its surroundings, making both the people and the environment happy and healthy. Let me know in the comments. Do you think the humans are the good guys or the bad guys after all the words that I just said? Or do you agree with James Cameron and think that the humans have to evolve into something different, blending the two worlds together and creating something entirely new? But if you do believe in that, it means that the mega corporation of the RDA is definitely the bad guy and humanity is pretty okay and worth saving. So yeah, let me know.